In the year of 2024, I watched a lot of movies, 108 of which were first time watches. In celebration of the new year, I want to look back on my 2024 in film and share with you guys what I've been watching. Now, I know this is a change of pace from what I usually make for this channel. This is not a ranking video, and most of the movies I'm going to be talking about here aren't animated. But either way, I hope you stick around because there are some great movies that I'm going to talk about here that I would love to recommend to you guys. I'll be trying my best here to recommend the movies I talk about to audiences that I think will enjoy them the most. And there will be no spoilers, so don't worry about skipping over segments of this video to avoid them. This is just a video where I will recommend movies that I saw for the first time last year. Anyway, I have a lot of movies ahead of us to talk about, so let's dive straight into the video. We're going to be working away from the start of last year all the way down to the end, starting with January 1st. And what better way to kick off a new year with a classic first time watch for me? So I decided to watch Back to the Future. That's right, I had never watched Back to the Future before January 1st of last year, and yes, I wish that I had watched it sooner. This movie is brilliant. It's just everything that you could want in a time travel movie. It's funny, quotable, it's smart, it's a classic for a reason. I knew that I had to get up to the sequels eventually, and I partially did. I did watch the second movie, which I'll talk about soon, but just not the third. But as for this movie, this is definitely recommended by me to almost everyone watching this video. I suppose if you're picky with your visual effects in movies, you will not be impressed while watching this, but you can't hold that against it. It's a fairly old film, and even so, I found these effects to still be very charming. Otherwise, this is a near perfect family feature in my eyes. It genuinely feels like a movie all ages would enjoy. On January 4th, I decided to check out this little movie called Circle. It was on Netflix and I had my eye on it for a while. This movie is about a group of 100 people who get abducted by aliens and they are trapped inside of a circle where every minute they have to vote on who dies. The last person there gets to live. It was a pretty scrappy movie, but honestly I found it to be hilarious. Watching people turn on each other for the sake of their survival in one room was surprisingly entertaining. It's like a low budget, even more twisted version of Squid Game. Don't get me wrong, it's not necessarily a good movie, but it is really funny to watch, so I guess that makes it a guilty pleasure. The ending twist especially makes this movie not all that rewatchable, but overall I enjoyed it. I would only strongly recommend it to you though if you have a friend over. I feel like watching this with a friend would be pretty funny. Big jump to January 16th, I decided to take my first step into the Fast and Furious franchise by watching, well, the first movie. I saw it with my elder cousin who grew up with it. He advised me to avoid watching the later movies in the franchise since they apparently just get really ridiculous. Judging off this first movie though, I thought it was pretty good. There was actually a really strong story here and not just fast cars and racing. If you like anything racing related or just high thrills in general, this is a goldmine for you. I liked it, though I didn't get up to watching any of the later movies in the franchise. Time to add them to my ever-growing watch list. Going back to the Future, on January 18th, I watched Back to the Future 2. Considering how much I loved Back to the Future 1, it's only understandable that I would soon watch the next movie, and I'm here to report that I also loved it. The story was just as fresh as the original, if not fresher, only this time they went to the future instead of the past. They didn't exactly depict 2015 the best, but I'm shocked at how much they did get right. Like the fact that there are movies here showing Jaws 19, they perfectly depicted Disney franchising, my god. But yeah, this was really great. It's around the same level as the first movie for me, but I think I still slightly prefer the original. I still loved it though, and I would recommend it to fans of the first movie. Again, I did not get up to watching Back to the Future 3. Some other time travel movie got on my radar around this time. Like, it's all understandable, guys, just trust me. Later in the month on January 21st, I was scrolling through Netflix late at night, as one does, and saw a new Zack Snyder movie that caught my eye. It's called Rebel Moon, and it was a part 1 of 2. It looked interesting, so I decided to put it on. Ha! I mean, it's not like I could have been watching Back to the Future 3 instead. Anyway, Rebel Moon Part 1? Yeah, it didn't really impress me. The action was cool, I admire Zack Snyder's style, even though there is way too much slow-mo, and the effects look good, I guess. But otherwise, it has that Part 1 of 2 effect where the climax just wasn't all that exciting. It was just a movie about a group of fighters forming. You should have named this Rebel Moon Band together. And sadly, Part 1 didn't really get me excited for Part 2, so I decided to skip the second part. I did hear that an extended Snyder Cut would be released later in the year, which would have a lot more violence and gore, so maybe I'll watch the full version someday, but looking at that runtime, yeah, I'm good, bro. So overall, in my opinion, the original cut of Rebel Moon Part 1 was fine. I wouldn't recommend it personally. Maybe watch the extended cut if you're curious, but I'm not sure how much better that is really. It's February 2nd, and at this point in the year, I decided to make a DreamWorks animation ranking video. I was originally going to rank the designs of DreamWorks villains, but after hitting writer's block way too many times and brain fog really getting to me, I just decided to rank the movies. So I had now 51 different DreamWorks movies ahead of me to rewatch. and the DreamWorks movie Orion And The Dark was the first DreamWorks movie that I watched that was completely new to me. Well, to be fair, it was new to everyone since it released on like February 2nd, but yeah, it was okay. I ranked it at number 38 out of 51 in my video, and that ranking still holds up for me. Anyway, I already made a whole review on this movie, so go check that out if you want, but I didn't really love Orion In The Dark that much. It was decent, but I haven't rewatched it since, nor have I had a desire to, so take that as you will. I wouldn't strongly recommend it to animation fans, but if you're curious, go ahead. Watch the video I made, or watch my DreamWorks ranking if you want my extended thoughts. So breaking news guys, I have an academic life that sometimes requires me to watch certain movies for my classes. And so for my English class, I had to watch Hidden Figures, a movie about 3 African Americans working at NASA. I'm not usually very excited when I have to watch movies for class, and this one had me thinking no differently going into it, but I was pleasantly surprised by this one honestly. This genuinely had a lot of good writing and powerful performances. Hidden Figures is based off a true event in history, and I'm not completely certain if this movie is accurate to the real event, but I still thought it was good. Jim Parsons playing the villain though, I'm sorry, this is just Sheldon Cooper from The Big Bang Theory. He is no antagonist in my eyes, it does not feel right, why am I not hearing Bazinga? Still, this was enjoyable, not really the type of movie I'd watch in my free time, but judging by that A+ cinema score, if you were curious to watch this one, you will love it. February 11th was the day I decided to take a break from constantly watching DreamWorks movies. I broke the cycle by watching this indie animated movie called Ron's Gone Wrong. I was very curious to watch this one for a while because the founder behind the indie company and writer behind this movie was Sarah Smith, who wrote and directed one of my favorite movies, Arthur Christmas. So I was coming into this movie with massive expectations, expecting something on a similar level, and after watching it, well, I didn't think it was Arthur Christmas, but I still really liked it. Now I know we've had a lot of similar animated robot movies in the past, so this isn't the most original conceptually, but I didn't care that much here. I found this to be a really comforting watch, and it's actually funny. And Ron, I love him so much, oh my god. This is just a really enjoyable movie with a great message about friendship. It is a little overly long for my liking and very Gen Z coded, but I guess that's not a bad thing considering how Gen Betas are now spawning. God, I'm getting old. Still, this is a good movie and I think families and animation fans will adore it. Ah yes, back to the DreamWorks Marathon cycle. Today we're talking about Sinbad Legend of the Seven Seas, and I liked it. For the most part I thought it was well animated, I liked the pirate and adventure setting, didn't love that ending though. Still, I enjoyed it. For more details, you can look at my DreamWorks video. Yeah, you get the point. Next movie. Now we're going to talk about another DreamWorks movie, Joseph King of Dreams, a direct-to-DVD film adaptation of the Genesis story from the Bible. And yeah, it's not bad. I feel like it's a little underrated considering how I've heard nobody ever talk about this movie, and it's not exactly as powerful as DreamWorks' other biblical story adaptation, The Prince of Egypt, but you know, it's decent. Just like Sinbad, look to my DreamWorks video for my extended thoughts. As a casual action movie fan, I've watched a lot of action movie franchises. The Bourne franchise starring Matt Damon being one of them, and February 17th was the day I watched the Bourne Legacy, which serves as another sequel to the franchise. Except this one doesn't even have Matt Damon. I know this movie isn't focused on Bourne's character, but this just feels like a franchise milk. The Bourne Ultimatum ended perfectly, why make another movie without the iconic lead? Either way, if you're a fan of the first 3 Bourne movies, this is harmless, but just very forgettable. I wouldn't personally recommend it, but if you're interested to watch it, I wouldn't stop you. It's just fine. Definitely my least favorite out of the 4 classic Bourne movies though. I love Jim Carrey, and I hope a lot of you guys do too. He's definitely made a legacy of himself as a comedic actor, starring in movies like Dumber and Dumber, The Good Grinch movie, and my personal favourite from him, The Truman Show. Actually, that movie is a psychological horror, what am I even saying? However, on February 20th, I decided to watch a movie starring him in a romantic drama. That's right, I'm talking about The Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. I was interested to check out this movie for a while, but it was only now where I felt like I really needed to, mostly because of the Orion And The Dark video I was making at the time. The writer behind Orion And The Dark and this movie is Charlie Kaufman. I felt like I should just really get one more taste of this man's writing before I make a review on one of his movies. And yeah, it's great, original, well acted, and above all, depressing. Very depressing. This movie depicts the pain of a relationship in a very interesting and psychological way that I don't think many romance movies do. Jim Carrey was absolutely incredible in this role too, which I didn't expect at all since I'm used to his comedic roles. This movie is definitely recommended by me if you're into romance movies. Thankfully, this movie does end on a happier note, so you won't exit the movie feeling terrible, unlike some other movies that I watched this year. Oh, and if you look at that, we're back to the DreamWorks Marathon. Today we're talking about Spirit. More specifically, Spirit, Stallion of the Cimmaron, and Spirit Untamed. We'll talk about Spirit, Stallion, and the Cimmaron first. It wasn't really my thing, but I respect it. Visually, it's incredible, and the Hans Zimmer score is breathtaking, but otherwise, I sadly just didn't really connect with it like a lot of you guys. As for Spirit Untamed, though, yeah, it's just a fine family flick. Not awful, and I definitely think it's better than Trolls 1 and 2 from DreamWorks, but it's just not really that entertaining. It doesn't have nearly as much style as Spirit, Stallion, and the Cimmaron. The story is very basic, and the adventure is just not whelming in the slightest. Massive W for Jake Gyllenhaal though, love that guy. Again, for more thoughts on the DreamWorks movies, just look at my DreamWorks video. But both these movies were just kind of okay or average in my eyes. Now we're going to talk about Mr. Peabody and Sherman, which was alright. It's definitely a funny film, and I think it serves as decent family entertainment, but its time travel plot didn't really impress me, and at times it just kind of came off as a little weird and obnoxious, but it was enjoyable. Following the first time I watched Mr. Peabody and Sherman was The Road to El Dorado, which I didn't love. The Road to El Dorado was well animated though, and there are some fun moments here and there. Otherwise, I just don't like the characters and their arcs. If you're interested in watching it, I won't stop you though. Many people love this movie. I know it's a cult classic from DreamWorks. I just sadly didn't love it. It's perfectly okay in my eyes though. Oh, did you look at that? It's March 9th, 2024, and you know what movie is currently playing in theaters? That's right, Dune Part 2. Let's watch it. Oh wait, I gotta watch Dune Part 1, what am I even talking about? Okay, just got back from Dune Part 1 and it was solid. Before watching Dune, the only Denis Villeneuve film that I had seen was Blade Runner 2049, which had some incredible cinematography and effects. And I also thought Dune Part 1 had that magical director's touch from him. Dune Part 1, however, I thought was better, but I sadly just didn't find the climax to be all that rewarding, and some parts definitely still did drag. Still, I was excited to watch Dune Part 2 the next day, and so I went to see it. And so, what did I think of Dune Part 2? Wow. Yeah, this movie is spectacular. Somehow the effects and color grading look even more incredible, and seeing it on that big screen was breathtaking. I cannot believe that was a year ago. The Hans Zimmer score actually sent my soul levitating, I cannot stress that enough. And that climax and all of the events leading up to that climax actually had my jaw drop. When that black and white scene with Austin Butler started playing, this movie locked in. I'd never left a theater so shocked after what I just saw. I was thinking, wait, it's already over? Which is crazy because this movie is really long. I was genuinely speechless. I did rewatch Dune Part 2 at home later in the year, and while it definitely didn't have that same incredible impact that it did in the theater, I can still definitely say that this is a very great movie. These movies are made for the big screen, and you should watch them on the biggest screen you can find. Even if you didn't love Dune Part 1, I'd definitely recommend this one. It is that good. After Dune, I realized, wait, it's Oscar season. And out of all of the Best Picture nominees for 2023, I'd only seen Oppenheimer and Barbie. And because the Oscars were literally a day away from me at this point, I decided to pick one more Best Picture nominee out of the ones that I didn't see. And so after some deep consideration, I decided to pick Poor Things, a movie that I did hear was going to rack up quite a lot of Oscars, which it eventually did. But yeah, I decided to watch it knowing nearly nothing about it, and I left the movie feeling pretty miserable, not gonna lie. I feel like you definitely do need to be a film enthusiast to love this movie. Like, don't get me wrong, there is a lot of incredible stuff here that I loved myself. The performances are brilliant, the movie's score is haunting, I cannot stress that enough. It gives this movie such a unique atmosphere, and the general look of this movie too is like no other. The ending too, pretty darn smart, it ties everything together super well. However, yeah, this movie is very horny and miserable. I'm fine with horniness in movies, but when I'm thrown with a sex scene every 15 minutes, I'm gonna get pissed. I know it's necessary for the subject matter that's being explored, but you can cut out some of it, like come on. Now obviously I'm not going to show all of that stuff to you, YouTube will take me away for a while if I do, but another recent example of a movie where constant horniness really impacted my experience would be like Nora. And I'm gonna be completely honest with you guys, I know that movie just won Best Picture, but I hated the first 40 minutes of Nora just because of how constant the sexual content was. Thankfully, Nora did pick up for me after that, but I have similar feelings towards Poor Things, except for Poor Things, it's kind of off and on with the sexual content. It just kind of pops up here and there. It's good, but it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea. Whew, after watching Poor Things, I think I need a Netflix movie to relax and not feel miserable. Well, at this point, a new Netflix movie just dropped, and it's Damsel, a movie starring Millie Bobby Brown. You know, from Stranger Things. And yeah, it was alright. It's a Netflix movie, so it's not gonna change your life, it's not gonna be a Good Will Hunting, but it's serviceable entertainment. It reminded me of that Adam Driver movie from 2023, 65, where you literally just watch a famous actor grunt in an environment for half the runtime. The twist at the end is fairly predictable, and the effects are just okay. You can definitely tell that this movie was just filmed in a studio with a green screen. Fantasy fans will either love it or hate it. For me, I have one word: mid. On March 31st and 22nd, I continued my DreamWorks marathon by watching the two new DreamWorks movies, Megamind 2 and Kung Fu Panda 4. I talked about them both in my DreamWorks video, but I'll quickly summarize my thoughts on them. Kung Fu Panda 4 was okay. It feels a lot more episodic compared to the other Kung Fu Panda movies, but I suppose it's welcomed even if it's not necessary. I just don't think too many Kung Fu Panda fans will love it. Megamind 2 though is not either welcomed or necessary. In my eyes, it is the single worst DreamWorks movie, and I would never recommend it to Megamind fans. Next up on March 29th, I decided to watch Speed starring Keanu Reeves. For those who don't know what this movie is, it is an action movie that Sonic the Hedgehog even liked. Come on, it's that one movie that he was watching in the first movie. I can't stress this enough, but I know people that really love this movie. And those people were the main reason why I watched this, and it was actually pretty darn great, like wow. All of the action was very constant and intense, it kept my attention almost all the way through. The end did sort of drag, but that stuff on the subway train was just so darn epic and I loved it. Great action flick all around, definitely a must watch for me if you're an action movie fan. Now that I have several movie franchises that I've started but never finished, a logical step for me would be to finish each one individually. Right? Right? Nah, because on March 31st, I decided to watch the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise, or Caribbean, whatever you call it. I did this because I just don't like finishing franchises I enjoy for some reason. Anyway, Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl, was pretty good. Kind of like how Back to the Future is everything you can want in a time travel movie, Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl is everything that you could want in a pirate movie. The effects especially look really amazing. If you told me this released in the 2020s, I would believe you. This movie looks better than a lot of stuff released today. My only issue is the pacing. I felt like it was way too overly long, and you could have easily cut out 20 minutes without impacting the story all that much. Still, it's a good start to a very iconic franchise. Can't wait to watch the other movies in like 8 years. There are a lot of great indie movies out there, and I'll be talking about a lot of amazing ones later and in part 2 of this video if I make it. However, there was this one indie experimental horror movie that I decided to watch on April 8th. That, dare I say, ended up becoming my least favorite movie ever. And that title goes to a little low budget feature called Skinamarink. I decided to check this one out due to a large amount of people on TikTok and stuff saying that this was some horrifying surreal masterpiece. I saw some clips of the movie beforehand and I was interested. This movie is about two children who wake up in the middle of the night to find out that their parents are gone and that they are being stalked by some mysterious night entity. This seemed like a cool backrooms, surreal-like concept, so I decided to check it out. And after watching it, I can safely say that I will never trust TikTok movies ever again. I cannot stress this enough, I have never been more bored while watching a movie in my entire life. This movie is just 100 minutes of looking at corners of a ceiling through a low-quality, grainy camera while two kids whisper stuff for no reason. I feel like constant jump scares would have really saved this one, but there are only like 2 jump scares in this entire thing. This was unbearable. This definitely would have been better as a 10-minute short film though. Hey, new Godzilla and Kong film is in theaters at this point. After how unbearable and boring I found Skinamarink, this was exactly what I needed. No experimental bullshit, just a gay entertaining rom-com between a dinosaur lizard and a monkey. And yeah, I had a lot of fun with it. If you liked Godzilla vs Kong, you'll definitely love this. Just like that movie, it's not very story focused, it's just cool kaiju action, which will definitely please most people. Great visuals and great action, all around a fun time. However, the human story in this is not great and gets like no focus. Like the Japanese Godzilla -1 was able to have such a great story while also delivering on the visuals and action. I just don't see why the American studios can't also do that. Okay, so next I decided to watch La La Land, a movie that a lot of my friends love. It's a romantic comedy from the legendary filmmaker Damien Chazelle, mostly known for his feature, Whiplash. Now look, I really love Whiplash, I cannot stress that enough. So going into La La Land, I was expecting some Whiplash level stuff from him, and I got something very different. It's a love story about your dreams and how you should always accept that things don't always work out the way you wanted them to. It's a very powerful message that's executed incredibly well here. All of the actors do an incredible job too, and the musical score is mesmerizing. I just wasn't really in the mood for a musical when I watched this, but I have a feeling that it will definitely grow on me after a rewatch someday. On April 17th, I watched the Romeo and Juliet from 1968, not to be confused with the Baz Luhrmann adaptation Romeo plus Juliet, and it was okay. I'm talking like a robot now, I gotta stop. I watched this for my English class and it was okay. It definitely adapts the Shakespeare story the best. I just prefer other Shakespeare story adaptations like The Merchant of Venice, and I really don't like how they made Romeo so quirky in this. I'll take the Baz Luhrmann version over this any day. It's not all that bad though. Now, we all know and love Christopher Nolan. He's the genius behind popular movies like The Dark Knight, Inception, Interstellar. I really love all these movies, so on April 25th, I decided to dig a little bit deeper into his filmography, which led me to this movie called The Prestige, starring Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale. I heard from many that this was seen as Christopher Nolan's most underrated, so I had high expectations going in, and did it deliver? Yes, it delivered. This movie is an absolute mind F, and it will have you second thinking so much. Christopher Nolan fans and just people that are into mind Fs in general will get a kick out of this. Though it is definitely more mind blowing and shocking rather than it is confusing, at least to me. Okay, so by now you should know that I have a habit of randomly starting popular movie franchises only to finish them 58 years later, even if I like them, and I got a franchise recommendation from one of my close friends. They told me to watch the Planet of the Apes movies, and I actually ended up watching them all in 2024. On April 26th, I got up to watching the first one, Rise of the Planet of the Apes. And it was interesting, definitely a strong way to start off the franchise. I just found it to be a little scrappy and I can't put my finger on why. It has a lot of good things going for it though, and I ended up having a good time. Caesar is such a cold character and I love it. Good movie though, I'd recommend it. My next first time watch was a movie called Joker. I think you should know what Joker is. It's a movie that I know many people love. It's a psychological thriller with the iconic DC villain as the protagonist. Watching Joker definitely did spark a lot of emotion within me, and I did end up feeling bad for him. Obviously, what he ends up doing is inhumane and completely messed up, but despite that, I still ended up feeling bad for how this guy was treated by society. I have heard that this movie did copy a lot of Martin Scorsese movies like Taxi Driver and King of Comedy. I haven't seen either of them, so I can't comment on that, but a lot of the people who do say this sound very insufferable to be around, so take that with a grain of salt until I watch them. I found Joker to be very powerful though, and definitely a unique take on the iconic DC villain. Okay guys, I'll say it. I actually ended up watching Madame Web, a movie that was dismantled by critics. I wanted to kind of like it because I like Sony's Venom trilogy, which critics also bashed. But Madame Web, this was something else. I'll say this, Madame Web is not a boring movie. This was absolutely hilarious to watch. For me, what made this movie so funny wasn't the actors looking high, it wasn't the rushed effects, it wasn't the ChatGPT-ass dialogue, it was the editing. For some reason, this movie is cut like a bloody Fast and Furious movie where all of the action is just super choppy. I mean, just look at this. How was this put on theater screens? I will admit, the cinematography in this movie is solid, but the editing is just so choppy and it ruins it all. Overall, Madame Web is a very memorable comedy that I would really recommend if you're looking for a hate watch. Anyway guys, to end off this video, we're going to have a quick face segment. Anyway guys, I'm going to wrap up the video right here. I'm going to be releasing part 2 very soon. Like, subscribe, do all that stuff to show me that you enjoyed it and you want to see more. If this video does not do well, I will not release part 2 and I will cry myself to sleep. But anyway, that's all I had to say. See you next time, God bless.